Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I paid for the entire cruise, top deck room, ocean view, champagne welcome package, the works. It was their 30th anniversary, and I wanted them to have something memorable, something they'd talk about years from now. What I didn't expect was that the memory would be my own heartbreak. 3 days before departure, I got a text from Dad. "We just thought it might be better without you." A simple sentence. So casual, so clean. Like it wasn't slicing through 29 years of daughterhood. I stared at my phone until the words blurred. Then I typed the only thing I could manage. Sure thing, because sometimes sure thing is the last thread of dignity you have left. The next morning. My phone buzzed nonstop. Mom, 22 times. But I wasn't home. I wasn't even in the same emotional place as the night before. I had packed a small bag and taken myself somewhere I hadn't gone in a long time, somewhere I always put off because I was too busy helping the family, or they might need me, or maybe next month. I drove to the coast. Not the cruise port, no. A quiet, windy cliffside where tourists never go and locals only whisper about. Waves hit the rocks with chaotic poetry. Seagulls argued in the wind. The air smelled like salt and possibility, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without earning the right to. I let Mom's calls ring out again and again. She finally texted, "Please pick up. There's something we didn't tell you." But instead of guilt tightening around my ribs like it usually did, I felt steady. I sat on a sun-warmed rock and typed, "I'll call when I'm ready." The power in that sentence surprised even me. When I finally called her back, her voice came through shaky and drenched in nervous energy. "Sweetheart, we didn't mean it the way it sounded. Your father thought you needed a break. We thought you'd want time for yourself." I let her talk. I let her circle around excuses. I let her fill the silence with words she hoped would soften the blow. Then I said the thing I'd been afraid to say my entire life. "You thought about everything except how it would feel to be excluded from something I gave you. You didn't protect me. You didn't even consider me." Silence. The heavy kind. The truth sits on your chest kind. Mom finally whispered, "We didn't know. We didn't realize." And that was the moment I understood. People cannot value what you never require them to, the truth they never expected. I told her I had taken a few days off, that I was somewhere peaceful, somewhere I chose for myself, somewhere that didn't require earning love by overgiving. And Mom, almost timidly, asked, "Are you coming to the port today? We wanted to see you before we leave." I almost smiled. "No, Mom, I'm busy living my own life today." A simple sentence. So casual, so clean. And this time it healed something in me. After they sailed away, I stayed on that cliffside. I watched the waves rise and fall like a reminder. Even storms have rhythm. Even heartbreak reshapes shorelines. And I made a quiet promise. Never again will I shrink myself to be included. Never again will I buy my way into someone's appreciation. Never again will I chase love that should have been mine freely. I left that place lighter, taller, unburdened. My parents came home apologetic, reflective, changed in ways I didn't expect. But here's the thing. I wasn't waiting for their change anymore. I had already changed myself. I spent months planning that cruise, scrolling through midnight travel forums, comparing cabins, debating whether the balcony upgrade was worth it. Of course it was. They deserved the ocean breeze. Every paycheck, I tucked away a little more until the numbers finally aligned and I could click purchase. It felt good. Not the kind of good that comes from buying something for yourself, but the warm, almost childlike pride of giving your parents something you know they'd never splurge on. I imagined Mom's smile when she walked into the stateroom with the floor-to-ceiling windows. I imagined Dad pretending he didn't care, then taking pictures from the balcony like he always does. I pictured them dancing on the deck under the string lights, holding hands the way they did when I was little, and thought their love story was the most magical thing in the world. I thought this trip might bring back some of that magic, not just for them, but for all of us. Maybe we'd laugh at dinner, sit together by the rail, talk the way families do when they're far from home and the world feels soft and forgiving. And the truth is, I didn't pay for it because I'm wealthy or showing off. I paid for it because I wanted to be part of something beautiful for once. Something that didn't revolve around responsibilities or fixing problems, or being the one who always says, "It's fine. I can handle it." I wanted a memory where I wasn't the family helper or the emotional buffer, but just a daughter enjoying time with her parents. I thought this cruise would be that moment. A reset. A reminder that love, when shared, expands. But sometimes you can give people everything and still end up standing outside the door of the very thing you built for them. When Dad's text came in, I was standing in the kitchen, halfway through making tea. The steam rising from the cup suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's morning, not mine. I reread the message over and over, each time hoping I had misinterpreted the words, that maybe there was a missing comma or some context that would make it less cruel. But it was exactly what it looked like, plain, intentional, and impossibly cold. We just thought it might be better without you. I didn't know what stung more, the exclusion or the casual tone, as though I were some optional add-on they had decided against at checkout. My fingers went numb around the phone. I could almost hear my heartbeat in my ears, that heavy, unsteady thud that happens right before a person breaks open. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask what did I do. I wanted to ask, how could you think a trip would be better without your own daughter? But I also felt this sudden aching tiredness, the kind that comes from years of swallowing the same small hurts. All the moments of being overlooked at family dinners, the times I picked them up from airports, the holidays I spent planning while they simply showed up, it all gathered behind that single text. And somehow, instead of arguing or begging or explaining myself like I used to, I just felt this strange clarity wash over me. A quiet voice inside whispering, "You don't have to fight for what should already be yours." So I typed back, "Sure thing," 2 words. Short, almost dismissively calm. But inside they felt like a fragile shield, the last bit of strength I could manage. A way to say, if you don't want me there, I won't force myself. A way to not let them see just how much it shattered me. I set my phone down on the counter and stood there in the silence, listening to the kettle continue to hiss long after the water had cooled, like even it was protesting for me. For the first time in a long while, I didn't rush to fix the situation. I didn't ask for clarity. I didn't plead for space in a story I had already written myself into. I simply let the moment be what it was, a painful truth finally spoken out loud. The next morning felt strangely quiet, as if the world had paused just long enough for me to decide what to do with the broken pieces inside me. Normally, I would have woken up replaying the text in my head, analyzing every word, wondering what I could have done differently. But that day, something in me shifted. I didn't want to sit in the house waiting for an apology that might never come. I didn't want to be within arm's reach of the same walls that had overheard too many of my tears. So I grabbed a small duffel bag, tossed in a sweater, a notebook, my charger, and walked out before my doubts could stop me. The air outside felt crisp and honest in a way people rarely are. I got into my car without a plan, just this instinctual pull to go somewhere that wasn't familiar. I drove with no destination, letting the quiet hum of the engine drown out all the thoughts I didn't know how to face. The sky was washed in shades of early gold, the kind that feels like a slow exhale after a long night. As miles rolled under the tires, the knot inside my chest began to loosen, if only a little. Then my phone started buzzing, once, twice, again. When I finally glanced at the screen at a stoplight, I saw my mother's name filling the missed call list. 15 calls, then 17, then 22. Each one a digital knock on a door I wasn't ready to open. There was a time when I would have answered on the first ring, terrified of disappointing her or making her worry. But that morning, my heart felt too tender, too raw, to be handled by the same hands that had brushed me aside the day before. I let the phone vibrate until it fell silent. It wasn't out of spite. It was self-preservation. For once, I chose quiet over conflict. I chose distance over damage. I chose myself, tentatively, clumsily, but sincerely. I eventually pulled over near a cliffside overlook I had only seen in photos before, a place I'd always wanted to visit but never did, because there was always something more important, more urgent, more family-related that needed my time. The moment I stepped out, the wind wrapped around me like a reminder that the world was bigger than a single text message, bigger than a bruised heart. The ocean below moved with a kind of wild honesty I envied, waves rising and falling without apologizing for their force, their volume, their presence. I sat on a sun-warmed rock and breathed in the salt-heavy air until the ache in my chest softened. My phone buzzed once more. I didn't look. For the first time in a long time, the silence I chose felt like peace instead of punishment. When I finally worked up the courage to call my mom back, the sky had already shifted into that soft, pale blue that makes everything look calmer than it really is. The wind was gentler, brushing strands of hair across my face as if trying to soothe me. Her voice, when she picked up, was nothing like the confident, organized woman who'd raised me. Instead, it trembled, thin, rushed, almost frantic. "Sweetheart. Finally. Why weren't you answering? We've been worried sick." I didn't say anything at first. I just listened to the sound of her breathing, the faint announcement in the background at the cruise port, the unmistakable noise of excitement and departure. A part of me wondered if she realized how deeply her silence yesterday had contributed to the hurt I was now trying to swallow. Another part of me understood that parents often think their decisions are smaller than the wounds they inflict. She kept talking, falling over her words, trying to glue together an explanation that even she didn't believe. "We didn't mean it the way it sounded. Your dad thought you've been stressed. We thought maybe you'd want time for yourself. You work so hard you barely take breaks?" I let her go on. I let her fill the emptiness with excuses, with softening attempts, with clumsy justifications that scraped against my heart instead of soothing it. Because deep down, I knew none of this was really about a misunderstanding. It was about a pattern. A lifetime of them assuming I'd be fine with less. Less attention, less inclusion, less care. When she finally paused, I exhaled slowly and said the words I had rehearsed 1,000 times, but never dared to say out loud. "You thought about everything except how it would feel to be excluded from something I gave you. You didn't protect me. You didn't even consider me." The silence that followed felt heavier than the cliffs around me, stretched tight and humming with all the truths we had avoided for years. My mom wasn't someone who did well with silence. She tried to jump back in, her voice strained. "We didn't realize. We truly didn't. We thought you thought," I said softly, "but you didn't ask." She inhaled sharply, like the words had landed somewhere tender. I wasn't trying to punish her. I wasn't trying to guilt or shame her. I was simply tired. Tired of being the flexible one, the understanding one, the one who absorbed everyone else's comfort at the expense of my own. For the first time, she seemed to hear me. Really hear me? I could picture her standing there at the port, clutching her phone, watching other families gather with their children, whole, unbroken, together. Maybe she saw a mirror she didn't like. Maybe she saw the shape of the daughter they had pushed to the edge without noticing. Then her voice softened to something I rarely heard from her: uncertainty. "We want to see you before we board. We're at the port now. Can you come?" I looked out at the vast stretch of ocean, wild and unapologetic. A place I had chosen for myself, not because I was invited or allowed, but because I deserved somewhere I didn't have to be small. "No, Mom," I said quietly, gently, truthfully. "I'm busy living my own life today." The words didn't come from anger. They came from healing, from the first roots of a boundary finally taking hold. And this time the silence between us didn't scare me. It freed me. After they sailed away, I remained on that cliffside long after the ocean mist settled onto my eyelashes. I watched their cruise ship shrink into the horizon until it became nothing more than a glimmering dot against the endless blue. But surprisingly, I didn't feel left behind. If anything, I felt like I had intentionally stepped off a stage I'd been forced to perform on for years. Always smiling, always giving, always understanding, always bending. The wind tugged at my sweater, and for the first time in an unbearably long while, I felt the weight of all the moments I had carried alone. The times I mediated their arguments, the nights I stayed awake helping them with bills or paperwork, the small sacrifices I made again and again hoping they'd someday see me the way I saw them. I felt all of it lifting off my shoulders, not suddenly, not magically, but slowly, like sand slipping through an open palm. I walked down from the cliff to a quiet stretch of beach, my shoes sinking into the damp sand. There were families building sandcastles, couples holding hands, kids chasing each other with sun-wet laughter. Watching them, I realized something almost embarrassing in its simplicity. I had spent so much of my life trying to be included that I never stopped to ask whether the people I was fighting for actually created space for me in return. That day I made space for myself. I sat on the beach and let the waves nip at my toes until they went numb. I journaled for the first time in months, filling page after page with all the things I had swallowed, minimized, brushed aside. Not accusations, just truths. Truths I had never given myself permission to put into words. And with each sentence, each shaky scribble, I felt myself reclaiming pieces I thought I'd lost. When the sun began to set, it painted the water in shades of rose gold, as if the universe was congratulating me for finally choosing myself. I watched the light shimmer across the waves, shifting, dancing, refusing to stay small or still. And God, I felt that. I felt that in my bones. Driving back that evening, I didn't feel anxious or worried about what my parents were thinking. I wasn't rehearsing explanations or apologies in my head. I wasn't preparing to defend myself. I was simply calm, grounded, almost proud in a quiet, trembling way. And somewhere between the cliffs and the road home, I understood something I had been too afraid to admit before. I had been waiting my whole life for them to change, but the real power was in changing myself. For the first time, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't trying to earn a place. I wasn't shrinking to fit into their comfort. I was stepping into my own worth, fully, unapologetically, one breath, one boundary, one brave choice at a time. In the weeks after their cruise, something in the rhythm of our family shifted. Not dramatically, not with grand apologies or tearful reunions, but with small, careful steps. When my parents came home, they didn't walk through the door with the same quiet assumption that I would greet them, unload their bags, and ask about their trip. Instead, they hesitated. They looked at me with a gentleness I wasn't used to, the kind that comes from seeing a version of someone you didn't know existed, and I didn't rush to fill the silence this time. I simply let it be. Dad cleared his throat the way he always does when he's trying to steady himself. "We missed you," he said, voice softer than usual. "More than we expected." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a beginning. A real one. A sincere one. Mom hugged me in that hesitant, lingering way that mothers do when they're afraid they've broken something precious. "We should have asked you what you needed," she whispered into my shoulder. "We should have included you. We know that now." Hearing those words didn't erase the hurt, but they met it. And that mattered more than pretending nothing had happened. We talked, not as a family performing politeness, but as people trying to understand each other. I told them how it felt to be the daughter who gave everything and received scraps of attention in return. They listened, and the listening was maybe the first real gift they had ever given me without me having to earn it. Over time, we rebuilt, not the same old structure where I stood on the outside knocking, but something new, something balanced. Something where my needs weren't an afterthought, and yet, the most important transformation wasn't theirs. It was mine. Because choosing myself that day, walking away from the port, stepping into solitude, reclaiming the weight of my own worth, that was the moment my life split into before and after. Before, I bent until I broke. After, I learned to stand tall even when my voice trembled. Now, when I think about that cruise, I don't think about the rejection or the sting of that text message. I think about the ocean, the cliffs, the wind, the silence I chose. I think about the girl who finally decided she was done begging for love she had already given so freely. And I think about the woman she became the moment she whispered to herself, "I deserve better and I'm allowed to demand it." In the end, it wasn't about a cruise. It was about coming home to myself,